Hello, everybody, and here we are on our day 4. So, it has been 3 days, and you have been supporting me a lot as you guys have been learning things, and you probably have installed Unity as well. And now you are a master in navigating the scene window, right? So, today is day 4, and you all might be excited about what we'll be doing today. So, today we will be taking a look on the primitive objects available in Unity. Also, we'll be taking a look at the component system in Unity. What are components? How do they affect our game objects? Okay, so let's straight away dive deep into it. So yeah, did I say wrong? Did I say that wrong? I guess. So let's dive deep into it. Yeah, blah, my bad. Yeah. So again, here we are with our simple first Unity project, and yeah, let me position myself here. Okay, here we are. So just a quick recap for day 3. What we did yesterday, that was we looked into the scene window, and now we are pretty much pro at navigating, moving around, viewing our objects in the scene window. We're also aware about this orientation thingy, okay, and we know how it works, and it will showcase us from the top, the bottom, and the left and the right view, right? So moving on, we can also use our right click button to see here and there, and use WASD to navigate into the scene. Okay, so yes, here we are, and now today we will be looking into the primitive game objects. So first of all, the first question that comes to our mind is, what are primitive game objects? Okay, simply these sphere, this cube, these both of these are part of primitive game objects. Okay, so basically what are primitive objects? Simply in your hierarchy window, right click, and here you would see 3D objects, and these game objects are known as primitive game objects. So basically these are 3D objects that that are pretty primitive in their nature, and they're already given to us by Unity for prototyping or maybe for playing around and looking at things. Okay, so let's look at them one by one. We already have a cube here. Okay, we already have a sphere here. Okay, and let's position them side by side. Okay, now let's add a capsule. Okay, let's set its position to 0 0 0, and then again move it on the x-axis so that this is separated and we can differentiate between all the objects. Let's add a cylinder again. If it is not coming on 0 0 0, let's position it properly. Yeah. Okay, what else is left? So a plane is left. Oh yeah, that's plane. That's plane. Okay, and let's put it downwards. And what else we have? A quad. Okay, so quad is basically a plane itself. Okay, it's a smaller plane, you can say, and it is rendered from one side only. What do I mean by rendered? Basically, it's material, which these all the things we'll be taking into look today: material, rendering, and whatnot. Okay, so as of now, you can say is you can only see its material from one side. It's only rendered, it's only seen from one side. From other side, it's transparent. Okay, let's stick to that. So here are all of our primitive game objects, right? So these are our primitive game objects: cube, the sphere, the capsule, the cylinder, and the quad, as well as the plane. Okay, so these are our primitive game objects. Okay, now that we have known about primitive game objects, let's get to know about components. So what are components? So from last lecture and in this lecture as well, you have seen me do positioning, do rotation, do scaling by this transform thingy here. Okay, what exactly is this? So this is a transform component. So basically all these are game objects, right? Everything is a game object, right? To give some properties, to add a behavior, to add something, to add maybe a nature, maybe a property to any game object, we need transforms. Okay. Oh, sorry, my bad. We need components. Okay. So every game object will have a transform component. Okay. So let's see. Okay. Let's see. What do I mean? That we can give properties. We can add properties. We can give behaviors to a game object via component. Okay. Let's see. Let's click on this sphere thingy. Okay. Sphere game object, and let's see what all components it has. Okay. The first and the foremost is transform. With the help of this, we can actually move it left, right, maybe in x-axis, y-axis, and z-axis. We can rotate it as well. Okay. And we can scale it as well. Okay. So this is one component. What else do we have here? Okay, let's resize the window so that we are able to see it. So we have a mesh filter component. Okay. So basically, this is adding a mesh. So what is a mesh? So what is a mesh? A mesh would be basically a mesh. For example, okay, so let's take an example of a table. Okay, for example, you have a wooden table. Okay, and it has been painted brown. Brown paint is being done on that. Okay, so the body of the table that is made out of wood would be its mesh, and the color that it has would be its material, which will be having a brown color. Similarly, here we have a mesh as well as we have a material. Okay, so let's see. To see just the mesh, let's disable the material. Okay. Okay. Let's remove the material. Okay. Another way to see the mesh is, what we can do is, we talked about these modes, right? So let's see the wireframe. Okay. So this here, this view, okay, whatever these lines, these things you're seeing, this is a mesh. So there is no material right now, right? This is just the pure body of the game object. So this is a mesh. This mesh makes up a sphere. This is a mesh of a cube. This is a mesh of a cylinder. And this is a mesh of a cube. And this is a mesh of a plane. And this is a mesh of a capsule, right? So again, let's click on sphere and let's go to shaded background. Let's go. So here we'll be able to see the mesh as well as the material. Okay. So this is the mesh. Now you know what is a mesh. Now, so the body, the structure of a game object is known as a mesh. And what is a material? A material is, how it looks. How it looks. Maybe the color, maybe the roughness, maybe how metallic it is, how shiny it is, right? So let's see. So here we have a mesh renderer. What is a renderer? Rendering means to show. Okay. So the game object, the Unity software is rendering this sphere. That is why we are able to see it. Okay. So if we remove this mesh renderer, we won't be able to see the sphere, because we have told Unity software not to render it. That is, not to process it, not to show it to us. So that is why we are not able to see. Okay. So we saw that all these things, these are adding some property, some value to the game object. All these things are components. Okay. Like a mesh filter, like a mesh renderer. Let's see what else we have. So we have a sphere collider as well. Okay, so we will be looking into these colliders as well in our coming sessions. Basically, a collider is a component which gives this sphere, this game object, the properties to collide. That is, collide means it will act as a physical object, and it will actually it won't pass through things, right? For example, if I add a rigid body component here, again, rigid body is a component that we have already seen, right? So if I add a rigid body component here, this will add some properties to it. So basically, this has added a physics behavior, a real life behavior to it, and it has added gravity to it. Okay. So let's see. Let's see. So if I play now, okay, let's get into game mode as well. What you will see here is, if I play now, first and the foremost, this sphere will fall, and nothing else will fall, because none of the other game objects have a rigid body component. That means no gravity, nothing will be applied on this. But this sphere has a rigid body component. That means gravity will be applied on this. Let's see in action. As you saw, this falls, and this is, stopped by the plane, because it can detect the collision with the plane, right? And the detecting the collision, that it is actually interacting, or it is, it cannot pass through the plane, this is taken care of by collider component. So what if I disable this component? Okay, how do you disable a component? On the top left, you have a tick mark. If you click on this component will be disabled. So if there is no collider on the sphere, it won't be, interacting with the plane. It should actually, pass through the plane. Okay, let's see this in action. So as we saw, it passed through the plane and it's falling. Okay, because we didn't have any collider on it. Okay, so as you saw, different components can add different values or properties to the game object. So that is what components are. And there are multiple components. Okay, so as you saw, how can we add a component? We click on a game object, and then we have a button right here saying add component. Okay, so there are multiple and, magnitude of components, and you can find them while writing here. Okay, so there are audio components, effects components, these add some effects. Okay, there are mesh components like the mesh filter and the mesh renderer. Okay, there are physics components, these colliders, and there are joints and whatnot. Okay, there are rendering components, then there are UI components, video components, and whatnot. Okay, so each of these components will add some special property or some special nature to the game object. Okay, so components are used to add properties or some nature to a given game object. Okay, and this is how you add a component, by clicking on an add component button, by selecting a game object and then clicking on a add component button. How can you remove a component? Like if I've added this rigid body component, I no more want, this to behave, as a physical object, this to behave, this to be affected by the gravity. How can I remove it? So I can remove it via this three button icon. I can click onto it, and then I have multiple options. Reset, remove component, move up means, visually it will be moved up. Copy component, so that I can paste this very exact component with all these properties to another component. And, find references, properties. So as of now, we are just concerned with the remove component. So as soon as we click on it, this component will be removed. And now we no more have, gravity affect this sphere. Okay, similarly, if we remove the mesh renderer component, then we won't be able to see it, because this won't be rendered by Unity. Okay, we want to get back the component. So let's press, Command Z or Control Z to undo this action. And what if we do not want to remove the component, but we only want to disable it? Okay, so this little checkbox will allow you to disable any component, whichever can be disabled. Okay, some components can be disabled, some cannot be. Like you cannot disable this component, you would have to just remove this component. Okay, so this is a mesh, right? As of now, we have given it a sphere mesh, right? We can give it a capsule mesh and it will become a capsule. We can give a cylinder mesh and it will give a cylinder. Okay, so this is what a mesh is, the structure of it. Okay, and here you saw with this button we can click and, find what kind of elements can be put here, and we can choose from them. So this was just a brief, very brief about components. Okay, so now let's play around with a few components. Okay, let's see what can we do. So we have been using transform component from day one or maybe two, because on one we just had a session, right? Okay, so this transform component, with the help of with the help of these tools, right, we were able to move it, remove, rotate it, scale it, right? But but what exactly these tools are changing? These tools are changing the properties of the transform component. Okay, so another thing to take care, or take a note, is every component has some properties. Like this is a transform component, it has these properties: position, rotation, scale, and this can affect these properties of any game object, of this game object, right? On which game object this, on whichever game object this component is being added, this is a component. These are the properties it can affect. Okay, so as I change here, the position is affected. If I change this, the rotation is affected. Okay, and if I change this, the scale is affected. Okay, So what if, now you are in a place like this and wherever and whatnot, and now you want to get it to, 0 0 0 position, and 0 0 0 rotation, and like 1 1 1 scale. That is the basic, the reset, the base, the default value of this component. Either you can, manually type in, okay, and get this here. Otherwise, what you can do is, if you want this to go to its default, state, this component, you can simply again click on this three button icon and click on reset. Okay, this will simply reset the position, and reset position. Why position? Because this will reset the properties of the component, and as of now we're trying to reset the properties of transform component. And what properties are of transform component? Position, rotation, and scale. Okay, similarly, what else we can do? Okay, so we have a sphere collider. Okay, we can okay, let me show you something fun. Okay, so I told you that collider is responsible for this, to interact, to set its limits, from where it will interact, from where it will, detect the collisions and whatnot. Okay, so let's see. So if we have a collider, and what if we increase this collider? Okay, so let's see what happens if we increase the size of this collider. So what I've done is I've increased the size of the collider. This green circle you're seeing, this is a collider, and I have increased the size of this collider. Okay, so let me separate this sphere so that we are visibly able to see it better. Okay, so again I clicked on this edit collider button, and this gave me these squares, which I can actually click and drag to increase or decrease the size of this collider. So now the collider, now what you can see here is the size of the collider is bigger than the mesh of the game object. The sphere is small, but the collider is bigger. Okay. Now let's see what happens. Okay. Let's see what happens if we again make it fall down. Okay. And what we need to do for the gravity to act on it, which component can we add on this game object? We can add a rigid body component. So again, let's click on add component, type in rigid body, and you will see two types of rigid body. So we are working in 3D environment, so that is why we'll use rigid body and not the rigid body 2D. So here we have said, this property, this is a rigid body component, and this has these properties. Okay, these are the visible properties. Coming on later in the session, we'll know that these are the visible properties here. There are multiple more properties, and those can be accessed via scripting. Okay, so as of now, one of these properties is use gravity. So let's, we have already ticked this one, so this will apparently use gravity. Okay, now quick question. You need to think. Okay, you need to think. So as of now, what condition do we have? We have a sphere, and we have a bigger than the sphere mesh. We have a bigger collider than the mesh. Okay, so the mesh is responsible for the structure. Okay, material is responsible for how we see it. The collider is responsible how it would interact, where it will collide. Okay, so what would happen here? What will happen here? What do you think? What will happen here if we click on the play button now, and as soon as we click on the play button, the gravity will act upon it, and this will fall down. So what will happen? Will it stop here, where it, where the collider touches the plane? Will it stop here where the mesh touches the plane, or will it pass down? What will happen? What do you think? Okay, just to make things visually better, let's switch to the shaded mode again, so that we are not shown the mesh anymore, because we have already understood what a mesh is. Okay, so again, what do you think will happen if I click play now? And we all know that we have a rigid body component here, so, and with use gravity enabled, this will surely fall down. Where it will stop? Will it stop here when the the collider touches the plane? Will it stop here when the mesh touches the plane, or will it pass through? What do you guys think? Take 5 seconds and think about it, because here in Unity we need not just to understand things, but we need to apply them also. And as and when we understand things, we need to make a picture in our mind of how things work, what will happen, and we need to anticipate. Okay, why is this so? Because this will be a check for you that you have understood the components or whatever we are teaching right now properly or not. Okay, so enough talking. Let's go. Okay, so let's go a bit higher, right? I'm sure you guys are not afraid of height. Yeah. Okay. Okay, okay. We just double clicked on the game view. That's why it was maximized. Let's show it here. Let's bring. Okay, let's move the camera as well. Let's move the camera to come here. Okay, as well as come back so that everything is visible. Cool. Yep. So I'm showing the scene view as well as the game view side by side. Again, in the scene view, we can see it from any angle, but that's not the case in game view, right? Okay, boys and girls, this is the moment of truth. Let's see whatever you have thought is right or wrong. Okay, so let's see. Let's go, let's go, let's go. Let's click on this play button. And here we go, and it's doing its magic, and the sphere starts to fall, and it stopped. So first thing is for sure that it didn't pass through the plane. Why is that so? Because we have it a collider. It's interacting with it. It's not letting it pass through. Good. Now, which option of the remaining is true? Does it stop where the mesh hits the plane, or does it stop where the collider hits the plane? Let's see, let's go down here. So we can see here that the mesh is not touching the plane, there is a gap. So where exactly it stopped? Where the collider is touching, right? Let's make the scene view bigger. So we can see it stopped where the collider is hitting it. Okay, so now you know what the collider is responsible for, and that I was not lying when I say that it was responsible for interactions and setting its bounds. Okay, so this is how it looks, and it has fallen down, but it again has not, the collider just touched the plane and stopped there. Okay, although the mesh is not touching the plane, but still it's not falling anymore because the collider is the one which is responsible, right? Absolutely right. So yeah, that was a fun little experiment for us, and now we know how we can test our things. In Unity or in game development, do as many small experiments as you can to check your learning, to see, okay, I thought this would, as per my understanding, as per my learning, this should work like this. Does it work like this? Okay, so yeah, so this was a little test. Okay, and now we can remove the component. How can we remove the component, by the way? We can simply select the game object, see the component that we want to remove, for example this rigid body component, and simply click on this 3 button option button and remove component. Rigid body is gone. Oof. Okay, and again, so now what you see here is these bounds have increased. Okay, the bounds of the collider have increased for the sphere. What if we want to get it into the default state? We want to get the collider component into its default state, that is just as big as the size of the mesh. What can we do? We can maybe manually do it 0 0 0, or we can simply click on the option button of the component and click reset. And yep, and yep, and yep, this is done. Okay, so as you can see, because of the light, I guess you're not able to see. Yeah, you can see now the collider is just in touch with the mesh, right? So this was a brief about components. Let's go a little further. Let's go a little further. As of now, our things look pretty dull, right? Pretty white, no colors, too boring, right? Let's add some colors. Okay. As so, what and what will it take to add colors? How can we make our things look more beautiful? What is responsible for looks? The material, the makeup, right? So in Unity, we have a component known as material, and we can use materials, okay, to and put it on any object to make it look different. Okay, so as of now, we can go into the mesh render and see what material there is. Materials, there is a default material. So as I click on it, it highlights it so as to tell me where it, which game object, which material I'm talking about. So this is a white material, okay? And this is a default material, that is why we cannot change it as well. So this is a material and it has so many properties. Again, this is a material component, right? There are so many properties, okay? There's a multiple emission, metallic, albedo, normal, height, white. What's that? Okay, so let's take a deep dive into it. What is a material and how can we make our scenes more beautiful, more visually appealing? Okay, so now here we'll be using the project window. Okay, because we want to create a material. Okay, so we can simply right click here, again go to create. Okay, and you will see tons of options. Do not get overwhelmed. This is too easy. We don't care about any one of these. We just care about this very one. This is the material. Okay, so let's say sphere material. Okay, so this is a sphere material. Okay, let's make it red. Wow. Oh yeah, it shows red here. It shows a red here. But this sphere is not red. Why? Because this sphere material, by the way, this is not showing a sphere here because we wrote sphere material. Okay, this is just a representation of the material. Okay, you can click on also if this is not shown, maybe on your end this is minimized like this, you can simply come here and drag it and you will be shown this stuff. Okay, so this is just a representation. Click on this and it will show you how this material looks on different types of shapes. Oh wow, we have a donut. Anyone hungry? This is a board. Okay, so let's change it to sphere itself. So yeah, I'm saying we have created a material, we have changed its color, but the sphere is not ready yet. Why? Why? Who will tell me why? What do you think is the case? Tell me. Because as we told, whatever changes are reflected in the scene view, they have to be, the things have to be here in the hierarchy, right? This is not being used in the scene, and that is why here it is in the project window, right? So we said in the very first session that project window contains all the assets or everything, material, 3D models, scripts, or anything that are used as well as that are not used as of now in this very scene. Okay, so let's drag this and put it on the sphere. We can put it like this, like here from hierarchy. Okay, not going. Why? It's going. Yeah. Okay, control G. Other than that, what we can do is we can put it here like this. If we put it on any game object, it will color it and show how does it look. Okay, we want it sphere. So now a sphere has some superpowers. It looks different. It is the odd one out in the white world, right? So this is one material. Let's color all of them. Okay, so let's simply, what else we can, to create a new material, what we can do is again right click in the project, create materials. Yeah, we can do that. Okay, let's do that for cube material. Okay, but what else can we do? We can simply control C, copy and paste it, control V, or we can also do control D or command D, that is duplicate. Okay, so this will duplicate stuff, and again we can rename it. Okay, so we have a material for cube, we have material for sphere. Let's get a material for capsule, material. Let's get a material for cylinder. Let's get a material for plane. Yep, plane material. Yeah, okay. So now let's put the cube material in cube. Okay, nothing changes. Right? Why didn't anything change? Because these are default materials. Okay, but if you put on capsule, it will change because we duplicated this material from the sphere material, which is red. So when we duplicate, we get all the properties, okay, into the other material. Let's go for cylinder. Let's go for plane as well. Okay. Now let's change them. Okay. So let's see. Let's go in cube. Again in cube, we have the cube mesh renderer. In mesh renderer, we have this material. If you click on it, it will be shown in your project window which material is it. Again, you can go down here, and now things can be changed because this is not a standard material. You can change its properties now. So there are tons of properties: rendering mode, albedo, metallic, smoothness, source, normal. No, I'm not gonna be through all of them. Okay. So there are tons of properties. You get the idea, right? So let's change a few of them. Let's understand a few of them. First and the foremost, the easiest one to understand is this albedo. Okay. Albedo, maybe here you can add a texture as well, maybe an image, and your cube will be wrapped in that image. Other than that, you can add a color as well. So here we have white color. Let's try to change colors. Okay, okay, we are able to do so. This is a color palette. You can change its color to anyone. This is my favorite color, by the way, cyan. Let's keep this one. Okay. Again, let's go to sphere. We want it red, bloody red. Let's go to capsule. Here, let's change its color to yellow. This greenish yellow. This looks better. More greenish. Is that what you want? Bent pants. Yeah. Okay. So again, going to cylinder, changing the color again, maybe to blue. Blue is one of my favorites as well. And let's stay, let's keep the quad white because now our, this scene is pretty colorful. We want somebody to be white as well, so that we can check against it. So these are the default material. That is why we cannot change its properties. Okay. So now let's deep dive into the properties of the material. Okay. So let's start with sphere itself. So we'll be changing different properties and different materials. So see the differences between the different properties. Wow, that's a tongue twister in itself. Okay, let's start. We were starting with the sphere, right? So let's see the property, the color property we've already seen. Let's see what is a metallic property. By the way, these are text. These boxes are for textures. You can add a texture. Okay, I'll show you adding a texture. Okay, we can see that. But let's see metallic. See what happens when I increase the metallicness. See the sphere. It's becoming more metallic in nature. It's reflecting light as a metal. I don't say metal wood, metal, the metal wood. Yeah. So if I remove you know if I reduce the metallic nature, so this acts like a non-metal. It shines like a non-metal. Okay. Let's try with that with the cube as well. So yeah, that's now more metallic in nature. See, see how it shines light like a metal now. Okay. So yeah, let's keep the cube metallic, I guess, or let's keep the sphere more metallic. Okay, yeah. Okay, that's one property. Another property is smoothness. So smoothness will dictate how it reflects or deflects light. Okay, so there is no shine on it now. Okay, if I increase the smoothness, there is a shine on it. Okay, okay. My battery is not my battery. My laptop battery is low. Although I plugged it in. Yeah. So here we go. Okay, so it's much more smooth, much less smooth now. So that means it's not reflecting light. Now it's reflecting light. You see, it's reflecting not only light, like you can see the environment. It's reflecting the environment. It's a reflector now. Okay, because it's pretty smooth. Okay, let's see that with this cube as well. See, this is reflecting everything now. It's become pretty smooth and now non-metallic as well. So it looks like a pool ball, right? Pretty smooth in nature, right? Yeah. Okay, so let's keep this smooth and let's keep this metallic. See, the smoother the metallic, the shine. It looks like a metal, right? If I remove its smoothness, again it's metallic, but not smooth now. Okay. So now that we have talked about metallic nature and smoothness nature, now let's talk about the next stuff. Okay. So let's go to capsule for that. Okay. And although there are a lot of different options like normal map, like the occlusion map, like the height map, like the detail mask, we will be skipping all of these for now, as we'll be looking at these things in our upcoming sessions where we'll be actually applying the textures. Okay. When we'll be talking about importing assets and 3D models, that's the time where we'll be talking about these. So we have talked about the color, okay, the metallicness, the smoothness, and now let's talk about this rendering mode. What is this? Okay, so in color you see that there are four things: R, red, blue, green. Okay, RGB, red, green, blue. Okay, and this is A, alpha. So basically this determines the transparency of the object. But you would see if we change this right here, this won't affect anything. Okay, so why is that so? This is so because our rendering mode has been set to opaque. Let's set it to transparent. Any changes you see in capsule? No, nothing yet. Okay, but now if we go to the colors, and now if we change the alpha, now we can see some changes. Now we can look through this capsule as this now has become transparent, and we have reduced its alpha property as well. So this is now much more transparent. The amount of transparency depends on the amount of the the value of this alpha. So if I increase it, this will be less transparent. Now also it's transparent. I can look through it, but the transparency is pretty less. And if I decrease the value of alpha, the transparency increases. So this just looked like a transparent plastic, right? Still it has the yellow feel. If we change the color, still you would be able to see the color differences, right? Yeah. But the transparency is pretty low. So let's increase, let's make it less transparent. So this property deals with the transparency. So yeah, this was more or less about the properties of the material. Although you can see a lot many properties, but just hold on to your horses. We will be talking about all of these in detail in our upcoming sessions. As of now, again, we want to go slow and steady and understand things at a pretty granular level so that we have a good understanding of how things work. So let's do a quick recap for what we did today in day 4. First and foremost, we talked about primitive game objects. These are primitive game objects. The next, we talked about components. What is a component? So basically, a component adds some properties, some values, some different nature, some, it adds something to the game object. Okay. So we saw different type of components. Then we talked about the capsule, the collider, or the capsule, but the colliders. Every thing has a collider. So like, it can have a collider. This sphere has a sphere collider, cube box collider, capsule collider, and this also has a capsule collider. Okay, the cylinder also has a capsule collider. Because these are some primitive type of colliders. Okay, so we talked about colliders. Then we, moved from a white scene, from where everything was white, to a colorful scene, and we added materials. Okay, although we also understood about text, about the mesh, right? What a mesh is with a wooden table example. So just keep this analogy in your mind. So if we're talking about a table, a wooden table, the structure made out of wood would be the mesh, and the color, the paint you do on that would be the material. Okay, so material basically determines how your game object looks and feels. And then we talked about material. We checked about different properties of materials like the color, like the metallicness, smoothness, as well as transparency, and the rendering modes. Okay, there are multiple more rendering modes. We'll be talking about them as well later, and there are a few more properties left in material. We'll be talking about these as well. Okay, so that's all from my side for day 4, and hope you have learned few new things, and now your scenes will be much more colorful. See you all. Have a nice day. Bye.